Hi, everyone, and welcome to Jehovah Boy. I'm your host, Doug Smith. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome. There is no guest today. You are stuck with me for a full episode. Why? Because I am going to respond to your emails. I put up the bat signal, and you guys heeded the call. Thank you so much. I've collected quite a few listener emails over the last couple months. I get more fan mail than George Harrison. Fun fact, did you guys know that? George Harrison, of all the Beatles, got the most fan mail. John Lennon definitely takes the cake for most fanatical fans, but George Harrison, most fan mail. So thank you so much for sending in your emails. If you have not already, please do so. I want to hear from you. You can share your thoughts about the podcast, compliments, criticisms. I can take it, whatever you want to say. Email me. What I most want to hear is your stories. If you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness or come from any sort of religious extremist upbringing, any sort of cult-like background, I would love to hear your story. Please email me at jehovahboypodcast@gmail.com. And to those of you who have already emailed, thank you so much. I want to respond to a couple of those today. So, without further ado, my first email comes from Michael M., who says, I heard you on Here's the Scenario and decided to check out your podcast. I've really been enjoying it so far. I especially loved your interview with Evan Williams. His story is incredibly inspiring, but I really related to your decision to give up weed. I've decided to try a sober 30 after listening, and so far I feel great. Thank you for continuing to share your story and introducing us to new and interesting people. Thank you so much, Michael. First and foremost, it's nice to know that going on other podcasts is probably more beneficial these days in comedy than stand-up itself. Here's the Scenario podcast. Shout out to those guys, Mike Feeney, Mike Cannon, Brendan Sagalow. Check them out. Hilarious podcast. I appeared on there a couple weeks ago. Podcasts really do boost your career more than seemingly anything else these days. I don't know how I feel about that, but it seems to be the truth. Anyway, thank you, Michael, for checking out my podcast through that podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. As far as Evan Williams, yes, his story is incredibly inspiring. If you have not listened to episode 6, I highly encourage you to go back and do so. Evan is a guy who I've known for, pretty early on when I started out. I've probably known him for 12 years, and he was a wonderful guest, truly inspiring to me because he has 14 years of sobriety. And when I had him on, I was about 15 days or something in. Yeah, 15 days, which is a drop in the bucket compared to him. And he hit the bottom of the well and much worse. I mean, this guy's seen rock bottom like few people I know. He was a teenage cokehead who was stealing money from his mother to support his coke habit. And he's a child of divorce, experienced multiple losses at a young age. His family kind of fell apart. His mom was addicted to sleeping pills. And while his mom was passed out on sleeping pills in her bedroom, completely oblivious to what was happening in the home, Evan would throw raging parties on weekdays. Keggers, cocaine, the whole 9 yards. And his mom was completely oblivious. So this guy was basically like living a fucking National Lampoon movie every day of his life during his high school years, just throwing fucking ragers, and nobody did anything about it. And started out fun and then took a dark turn with paranoia and stealing and car accidents. He totaled 5 cars, so he really, like I said, he really hit the bottom of the well. But 14 years of sobriety. And I used to hear about guys with sobriety. You know, you see people posting on social media, they'll post their coins, their 90-day coin, their 1-year coin, however many years they have. And it's a cause for celebration. And they always say things like, oh, sobriety is the best thing that ever happened to me. I love sobriety. I've never been happier. And I always thought, that's just what you're telling yourself that. You don't really believe that. You don't really mean that. It's what you have to do to stay alive, but it's not like you're enjoying your life now. And Evan's one of those guys who always seemed really, really happy in sobriety. And I kind of always made a mental note of that and thought, maybe there is something to it. So, 15 days in, it was really helpful to me to have him on and receive his encouragement. And I attribute a lot of my success with sobriety, even though as of right now, I have 76 days. Still not much, but every day counts, one day at a time. Starting to regurgitate all the cliche sayings from the program, but they exist for a reason. They're true. I also felt a little bit silly, equating my situation to that of a teenage criminal cokehead, but it's all relative. And, whatever your drug of choice is, whatever you poison you choose to partake in, it can ruin your life. And, weed seems relatively harmless to a lot of people. And I think to a lot of people it is. But for me, it had taken a dark turn. And it was ruining my life. The damaging effects of weed, I think, are minimized now because the stigma has been lifted. Now that it's legal, it's considered to be medicine. It's grouped in with this self-care wellness crusade that so many people seem to be a part of, myself included. And, it can be the butt of jokes in a way. I mean, I remember that scene in Half-Baked where Dave Chappelle is in rehab and he stands up at a recovery meeting and he says, I'm addicted to marijuana. And Bob Saget stands up and he goes, marijuana is not a drug. I used to suck dick for coke. You ever suck dick for marijuana? And, it's not the worst of the drugs, but, I never sucked dick for marijuana, but it was still fucking up my life. And it's nice to be free of that. It really is. And all the sentiment that I had heard people sharing about my life's better than it's ever been, it's true. I mean, I still have a long road ahead of me, but it is better than I ever thought possible. I'm free from the crippling feelings of dread and paranoia that were plaguing me on a daily basis. And weed was one of those things. When I first left Jehovah's Witnesses, was the ultimate escape. It was euphoric. It brought me peace and comfort and ease that I had never felt before. And I'm grateful that I had it early on. But over time, it became habitual, and the effects of it had changed to the point where I wasn't enjoying it anymore, but I was in denial about the fact that I wasn't enjoying it. It was bringing up all these horrible feelings, and I thought, well, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. It's almost like a mushroom trip. It forces me to deal with these dormant feelings that might not ever come up otherwise. So it's good. It's bringing it to the surface, but there's no need to continuously poke a sleeping bear. And I can access those feelings and deal with them much better from a sober mindset. So it was bringing me to a place of paranoia every day because I was a daily smoker. And I never thought I would have peace of mind and the calmness that I have now. I still wake up with anxiety, but it's not like a ticker tape throughout the day. And weed was definitely magnifying that. So, Michael, I wish you all the best with your sober 30. I hope you made it 30. I hope it's continued even further than that. I hope that was just a jumping off point. I just got back from my first sober vacation. First sober vacation since I was 17 years old, and it was amazing, and it made me realize that I was truly enslaved to managing my addiction, trying to manage my buzz or high, and it was so nice to be free of that because vacations were definitely one of those things where drinking and drugs were definitely used to enhance things that were already largely considered to be pleasurable. Going to a concert is a pretty great experience on its own. Going on vacation, pretty great experience on its own. But I always had to ramp it up. How can I make this the best, most fun, most exciting thing ever? And it often becomes a thing of managing the upkeep. It's continued maintenance. Where's my beer? Is that beer cold? Let me get a cold beer. Did you restock the fridge? Where's my lighter? Where's my one-hitter? Where's my one-hitter? Anybody see my one-hitter? Yeah, I don't know where my son is, but where's my one-hitter? Priorities. Where the fuck is it? Where's my weed stash? Oh, good. I found my lighter. Where's my weed stash? Is that your beer? That's my beer. It doesn't matter. Just give me another beer. Shit, the beer store's closed. We're out of beer? Oh, my God. Who's going to make a beer run? It dictates everything. And within 5 minutes of rolling into my vacation destination, I would know the locations of every place in a 10-mile vicinity that sold alcohol and or weed and how late they were open. And people say that alcoholics and addicts lack drive and determination. Not with that shit. They do fucking recon missions and they get to know the lay of the land the second they roll into a place. And, it's funny, like the town that I just went to, you see these plaques when you roll in. This was founded by the Dutch in 1864, and I was actually able to read that and appreciate the history, whereas formerly I would have been like, yeah, where's the fucking Shell station that sells Four Loko? It was really bad. It was really bad, and I'm really, really grateful to be free of that. Here's the extent that I once went to manage my addiction, which I will admit I have talked about on my first comedy album, but it's 100% true. If you haven't listened to my first comedy album, check that out as well. This is what comedy is now. It's shameless self-promotion. What do you think fucking podcasts are? Why do you think people go on podcasts? To promote themselves. This is what it's all about, folks. I'm sorry, but I got to do it. Check out my first album. It's called Barely Regal. It came out in 2019. I think it got removed from Spotify because my record label is a bunch of crooks, and they tried to shake down Spotify for a bunch more money, and then Spotify was like, no, fuck you, we'll just take you off our site. So now all the artists on this record label that were played on Spotify, people can't listen to their shit, which sucks. I think you can buy it. I think you can still buy it on Amazon or iTunes, but who fucking buys albums anymore? If you want to do it, I'm not going to stop you, but I don't do that, so I can't tell you, buy my album. If you want to, great, but hopefully you can track it down somewhere. Hopefully it'll wind up back on Spotify. But this is 100% true. I one time, and I hesitate to admit this, but I have actually done this a few times. But I one time brought weed with me to Mexico, which is not really necessary. Talk about bringing sand to the beach. There's plenty of weed in Mexico. A buddy of mine told me when I told him my plan, I was like, I'm going to bring weed to Mexico. He's like, you can get weed in Mexico. I was like, I don't speak Spanish and I don't want to say the wrong thing and wind up hanging from a bridge, decapitated. I've seen the news. I know what happens when you make the wrong move. Those cartels are no joke. So I had seen this movie called Maria Full of Grace in early 2000s. It's about these Colombian drug mules, these girls who are desperate to support their families, and they get involved with these drug cartels who encourage them. You should really give it a try. They're doing it for money. There's no encouragement necessary. They smuggle balloons full of heroin in their stomachs into the United States. And at one point in the movie, one girl, they got like 50 balloons. Like their bellies are they look like they're in their first trimester. Like they really cram them in there. And at one point in the movie, one girl, mid-flight, one of the balloons breaks, and she starts, she's really fucking zonked out on the flight, and you're like, oh my God, is this girl gonna make it a whole, I don't know how much heroin that is, but that ain't good. And then the cartel, they pick her up at the airport, they shuttle her back to a hotel, they put her in a bathtub, she dies, they fucking gut her and pull all the balloons out and just leave her there for dead. So, it's meant to be a cautionary tale. Like, hey, folks, this, people make money doing this, but this is a very dangerous business. I saw that and I was like, yeah, but that's heroin. I'm going to do that with weed. I saw this movie and I got inspired. I was like, what's the worst thing if a balloon full of weed breaks in my stomach mid-flight? I eat a couple extra bags of peanuts? Who gives a shit? So I truly was inspired. I remember seeing this movie with a buddy. I remember going to the grocery store right next to the movie theater immediately following the film and practicing in the produce aisle, standing there with jumbo seedless grapes, practicing in the produce aisle, just dry heaving the grapes. My buddy being like, you're a fucking idiot. And I was like, dude, I got to practice. This is a real thing. I can enjoy weed on vacations in foreign countries. This is amazing. I don't have to fucking stick it in a shampoo bottle and be sweating bullets going through customs anymore. I can rest easy knowing it's, secure. And the same buddy was like, dude, you don't have to swallow it, just stick it in your asshole. And I had the gayest possible response to an already pretty gay suggestion, which was, I said, I want it deeper inside of me. So that's what I did. So the night before my flight, I packed an eighth of weed into a condom and snipped off the excess, tied it off, vacuum sealed it, sucked out the air, vacuum sealed it, tied it off, packed it down, condensed it as tight as I could, got it down to like a testicle sized, nug of weed. And then I just, I filled my mouth with olive oil to lube it up, popped it in there and gulped it down. Now I did this completely on my own. My girlfriend at the time was oblivious to me doing this. Thank God. If she knew what I was doing, she probably would have been out the door. This guy's highly unstable. I deserve better than this. I should have done this surrounded by medical personnel. It's very dangerous to try to swallow something this large on your own, just alone in your bathroom. She's sleeping. I'm in my bathroom trying to choke down a fucking horse nad sized, horse nads are bigger than that. This human nad sized nug of weed. And the whole time I was doing it, I was just having these visions of death. Like, what if I choke? What if I don't make it out of this bathroom? What if my dad gets a phone call the next day from the coroner being like, Mr. Smith, we found your son dead on his bathroom floor with a condom obstructing his windpipe. Oh my God. Sir, in that condom we found, I know what goes in condoms, God damn it. Don't rub it in. He never would have gotten the full scoop. But yeah, it was it's dangerous, very dangerous, but I got it down the hatch, and then the whole flight, I was just burping up the taste of weed, and I thought, oh geez, this is gonna be really flying high on this flight, and yeah, I thought the condom burst in my stomach, but it was just, I don't know, weed's very potent, so I was just belching up this weed taste. Finally get to Mexico, we check into the hotel, and all I can think about, it's beautiful, we're in Tulum, Mexico, beautiful place. All I can think about is my next bowel movement so I can retrieve my drugs. All I was thinking about. We check into the hotel, my wife's like, I'm going to go check out the pyramids. I'm like, I'm going to go make a pyramid in the toilet and then be on my hands and knees digging through it, trying to retrieve my sweet, sweet ganja. And that's another thing. Like, sometimes it takes a while to pass. It's not like it really moves through your system. I think there's a lot of There's a lot of sharp bends in your digestive tract where it takes a little time to work its way through there. So it's not always in the first bowel movement that you make. Sometimes it's like the third one, and those first two you're just rooting through, be like, where the fuck is it? It's just flicking the corn out of the way. Where to go? What happened? So yeah, it dictates your life. It was a disgusting thing that I did, and I'm ashamed of it. I had a pretty great vacation because I was high every day, and at the time I was enjoying it, but that's not the way to do it. It was disgusting. I'm a fucking animal. But I thought I needed to enhance everything, and now I realize that I don't. And I realize the irony of me saying this as I'm wearing a John Denver Rocky Mountain High t-shirt. But I think the high that John Denver is talking about is just the high of being in the Rocky Mountains. I think that's what he meant. Just the high of nature. And that's what I just experienced. I was at this beautiful lakeside retreat in New Hampshire, in Lyme, New Hampshire, and it was wonderful. Taking the canoe out, swimming, sitting on the dock in the middle of the lake, meditating, birds chirping in the background, loons calling. It was beautiful. It was a wonderful experience. It didn't need any enhancement whatsoever. It was great. So I'm really grateful that I had that experience. So Michael, congratulations. I wish you a very successful Sober 30 and many more. And to anybody else who is contemplating doing the same, I can't endorse it enough. Give it a go. Okay, our next email is from Lloyd Christmas. Lloyd Christmas. I'm sure that's your real name. Lloyd Christmas. I mean, I already love this person. If you don't know who Lloyd Christmas is, I don't even think I want you listening to this podcast. Who's Lloyd Christmas? Quick. If you didn't say Dumb and Dumber within a split second, you are not a friend of the pod. That's Jim Carrey's character in Dumb and Dumber, the greatest film of 1994. Some say Forrest Gump, some say Pulp Fiction. No, Dumb and Dumber. One of the top 10 picks in the history of cinema, if you ask me. It's definitely the movie that I've seen more than any other movie. Dumb and Dumber, number one. Second's probably Midnight Cowboy. I know that's a head scratcher for most of you. That's my all-time favorite movie. We'll get into that another episode. Anyway, Lloyd Christmas writes, "Hello, Doug. Love the podcast. I'm an ex-JW. Thank you for giving us a voice." You're welcome, Lloyd. It's nice. Here's the thing. It's nice to have multiple ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and people from all religious extremist groups, sects, cults, spilling the beans on their YouTube channels. Thank God that this sort of thing exists. I'm not just patting myself on the back. I exist because of my forefathers. I'm not the first to do this. I was inspired by seeing other people doing something similar, and I thought, well, let me throw my hat in the ring. It's like an anecdote to the brainwashing, and this sort of thing didn't exist when I was growing up. As much as I bitch and moan about how much I hate technology, and even this is, I got a laptop on my lap. I got a phone filming me right now. I got a microphone plugged into the laptop. I got to upload this to Google Drive. I got to compress files. I got to go back and time code things for Instagram clips. It's a fucking headache. I want to hang myself with this USB cable every time I sit down to do this. And I know that I hopefully am doing a service for people, because I know that people need this. I certainly could have used this. I could have used this when I was a teenager and I was really contemplating getting the fuck out, and I didn't really see a way to do that. I really could have used this. So it's a wonderful thing that people have access to the internet now. People have access to these communities that they didn't have access to before. Because when I was growing up, you just had to hope there was some apostate conspiracy theorist who might pull you aside and be like, Armageddon ain't coming, man. It's bullshit. You want to live your life in the hope of a science fiction lie, or you want to live your life to the fullest now? That didn't exist. I wish that happened, but it didn't. So, I just had to watch my siblings get disfellowshipped and then not be able to speak to them for years on end to be like, well, I guess leaving isn't an option. I guess I'm stuck here. I'll just have to find a way to adapt to a life of misery. But now you really can. You can educate yourself online. You can reach out to fellow defectors, build a new community of real support, not support that's contingent on your allegiance to a vengeful God, and strategize a plan so that when you do go out on your own, you're not completely left twiddling your thumbs, clueless as to how to adapt to a life in the real world. Because Jehovah's Witnesses, for one, and I imagine most extremist religious sects, I know it's true of Hasidism as well, they do not prepare you for the real world. They want to keep you stunted so that you're dependent on them. And if you do decide to leave, a lot of people quickly realize, shit, I'm not equipped for this, and they come crawling back, not because they want to, because they have no other choice. They just simply want to survive, even as miserable as that survival may be. So it's really great that there's even like support groups out there. I haven't been to one, but I know they exist. So between the online community and support groups, you really can build a whole new foundation and kind of get a bit of a footing and a grasp on life in the real world and start to make a plan. Because when you leave, you do hit the reset button. You know, your friends and family, what you thought were your friends and family, they're going to cut you out of their life, and you are going to have to start over. So you got to build a foundation before you do so, because you don't want to go off the fucking rails like I did. It ain't fun. I mean, look where I'm at now. I got 76 days sobriety because I went balls to the wall insane when I left, because I was making up for lost time, and I had no idea how to live a responsible, normal life. So anyway, Lloyd, you're welcome, but I wouldn't be doing this if not for others who inspired me to do the same. So I need to take this opportunity to thank all you. I can't list everyone by name, but there are a lot of other channels, podcasts out there that are doing similar service and helping people in this predicament. So thank you to you. All right, Lloyd continues. I have a couple stories that I think are funny, though sometimes when I tell what I think is a funny story, people just look sad and shocked. Yes, welcome to the club. That is how it goes. In fact, every time I'm on a podcast, I'm like, here's a funny story about my childhood. The host is often appalled. I did this podcast a couple years ago called Are You Garbage? You guys may have heard of it. It's become hugely successful. Shout out to my boys, Kevin Ryan and H. Foley. Hilarious podcast. The format of the podcast is they ask you a series of questions like, do you brush your teeth in the shower? Have you ever cooked fish in the microwave? It's all these questions to find out how you grew up to determine if you're classy or trashy. And within maybe 6 minutes of interviewing me, it came to light that I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and then it just became a barrage of questions about my Jehovah's Witness upbringing, because neither one of them had ever met a Jehovah's Witness before, and their fucking minds were blown. And it became all about that. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's what it became about. And at one point, about 40 minutes in, their producer, he just has his head in his hands. He just goes, Jesus Christ, is this Are You Garbage or Are You Traumatized? Because yeah, it took a dark turn. That being said, I'm glad that I talked about it on there, because the outpouring of love and support from their listeners was astounding. People that reached out to me that were fellow Jehovah's Witnesses, people that knew other Jehovah's Witnesses that were in the same predicament. It was really remarkable. And that honestly was a big reason that I started this podcast. Is seeing that people were like, wow, we want to hear more about this. Thank you for giving us a voice. Thank you for shedding some light on this. But yes, oftentimes the stories that we have, others do find much more appalling than funny. Just wind up bumming everyone out. Anyway, Lloyd continues, when I was in grade 5, I saved my Jehovah's Witness classmate from Armageddon by swatting her potentially blood-filled hot dog out of her mouth and onto the ground. I didn't care if she had bought it for hot lunch. Her life was at stake. I was going to say, I don't think most hot dogs are blood-filled, but it is a school lunch hot dog, so you never know. And you know what? I don't think Jehovah's Witnesses should be allowed to eat hot dogs at all. I think it's strange that Jehovah's Witnesses are allowed to eat hot dogs because you're not allowed to engage in any form of sexual activity, but you're allowed to wrap your lips around the asshole of a barnyard animal. We all know that's what hot dogs are made out of. If you're delusional enough to think that they're made of anything else, sorry to bust the myth, but yeah, hot dogs are lips, assholes, knuckles, ball sacks. It's the scraps. It's nothing good. So it's basically barnyard animal genitalia. So I'm shocked that Jehovah's Witnesses are even allowed to partake of hot dogs at all. But, either way, I think you did your friend a favor here by slapping the hot dog out of her hand because, her life was at stake either way, even if it wasn't blood. I mean, it's a hot dog. You probably saved 10 years. You probably gave her back 10 years of her life just by preventing her from eating a school lunch hot dog. Anyway, Lloyd continues. Here's another story. When my husband was beginning to have serious doubts about the religion, and I was suspecting as much, we visited his super zealous parents who were pioneering in a tropical country. Okay, got to pause here for a second to explain to a lot of you what pioneering is. Pioneering is a term used to explain your level of devotion to the Christian ministry. And when I was growing up, I had to choose 1 month out of the summer, July or August, didn't matter, to auxiliary pioneer. There's auxiliary pioneer, there's regular pioneer, special pioneer. Auxiliary pioneer has to put in 60 hours of Christian ministry in 1 month, which when you're a teenage kid and that's how you're spending half your summer, I did not look forward to summer. The school year was brutal enough. I was trying to keep a low profile, not let anybody know that I was Jehovah's Witness, despite all the birthday parties, school dances, sports activities, all these things I had to avoid while not wanting to out myself as a Jehovah's Witness. And then come summertime, I'm out banging on people's doors, be like, hey, look who it is. It's me, your friendly Jehovah boy. So summer was a fucking nightmare. It wasn't even something I looked forward to. So I had to auxiliary pioneer. It goes up through the ranks all the way to a missionary. A missionary is the most elite type of pioneer. A missionary is someone who volunteers to go out in the Christian ministry in countries and various regions of the world where Jehovah's Witnesses have not yet been introduced. So the Watchtower, Bible and Tract Society, the headquarters, the governing body, whatever you want to call them, they are like, hey, we have 8 million people. We have 8 million members worldwide, but there's still these little pockets that have never heard the truth. They've never heard the good news of God's kingdom. We need to put boots on the ground in Mozambique or Papua New Guinea or wherever the fuck it may be. They send them all over the fucking world. And so these missionaries volunteer to be sent wherever they're told. It's a roll of the dice. They don't know where they're going to be sent. They basically put their name in a hat, and then they write down a bunch of countries on some other scraps of paper, throw those in a hat. I'm sure they have a less antiquated system than that. But I think you understand my point. It's completely chosen at random who goes to what country. So it's a total crapshoot, and you could luck out. You could wind up, spending a year in a beachside bungalow in Aruba, or you could spend a year sleeping on a dirt floor in Rwanda. You never know. You're volunteering to be sent wherever they tell you to go. And I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen a couple missionaries come back, with bleach blonde hair, suntan, looking so refreshed after spending a year in the Bahamas. Like, how was missionary service? Like, man, it was irie. Kept it real irie. They're fucking blissed out. They just had the best year of their life. But I also saw people come back from remote, war-torn regions of Africa who were shell-shocked husks of their former selves. Terrified. They were like non-vets. You'd walk past a construction site, a jackhammer would go off, and they would jump out of their fucking skin thinking there was, a rebel soldier uprising. So, scary shit. You never know where you're going to go. So, looks like Lloyd's... My husband was beginning to have serious doubts about the religion. I was suspecting as much. We visited his super zealous parents who were pioneering in a tropical country. Okay, so sounds like they hit the jackpot. They won the lottery. They got to go to a tropical country. That's cool. Okay, so the four of us went for dinner, and I tried a locally brewed alcohol. Like most witnesses, I could hold my liquor. I don't know what booze-hound witnesses you're hanging out with, but sounds like fun. All the J-dubs I knew, they were on the floor after 2 Michelob Ultras. These drinks were something different. After only 2 small drinks, I found myself in the bathroom with another woman who had tried the local brew, and neither of us could remember how a faucet worked. The next thing I remember was my tearful admission to my in-laws. I'm worried he's losing his faith. He even bought RRSPs. Now, I didn't even know what RRSPs were. I had to look this up. Registered Retirement Savings Plan. Goes to show you, once again, I am not an adult. Nobody ever told me about this. Sounds like a good thing to have. Lloyd continues, to the shock in their faces, you would have thought I just told them their son was the Zodiac killer. Their son was no longer demonstrating his faith in the coming new system by having zero retirement plan. This could only be the work of Satan. This is an interesting point, because Jehovah's Witnesses are encouraged to scrape by with blue-collar, minimum-wage jobs, not only because minimal demand in the workplace means increased demand in the faith, more time to devote to the ministry, going to meetings, whatever it may be. It's a full-time job being a witness, but also because they buy into the concept of you can't take it with you. And they believe there's no reason to squirrel money away and plan for the future when the end is near. Even though they've falsely predicted Armageddon for 100 years, they still maintain that the end is near. So there's no need to plan for the future. Put your faith in Jehovah. He'll provide for you in the future, because all this evil that you see in the world will be obliterated and you'll be saved. You'll live forever on a paradise earth. So there's generations of Jehovah's Witnesses who have died old and penniless because they have put their faith in something that never happened. It's tragic. So basically, they're saying if you really had faith in the coming new system, you wouldn't be caught up in material security. Lloyd continues, this one might not be funny, but I think it is. When I was a preteen, I was singing a Kingdom melody at the meeting, and it was one that I actually kind of liked, so I threw my heart into it and was enjoying myself. Now, Kingdom melodies, Jehovah's Witnesses have hymns, I guess you would say, that they sing at their church services, at their meetings at the Kingdom Hall. There's a whole book called Sing Praises to Jehovah. It's about 130 different songs. And the intro to this podcast, the theme music to this podcast, this is Jehovah's day, his rule is here to stay. That's a Kingdom melody. It was like the one time where you could really kind of cut loose under the guise of enthusiasm for God. Was, you got to stand up, stretch your legs after listening to some fucking drone, just regurgitate a bunch of brainwashing indoctrination for hours. You got to stand up, stretch your legs, and belt out a little ditty. And some of these were bangers. Some of them are pretty catchy tunes. Anyway, my mom was the designated opera singer in the congregation and was very proud of her singing abilities. She leaned over to me and told me that I sounded like a dying cat. I was embarrassed and did my best to sing quietly and not cry. A few weeks later, my stepdad sat me down for a chat because he had noticed that I was only pretending to sing at the meetings, and this must mean I didn't love Jehovah anymore, and what was I hiding? What a riot, am I right? Yeah, this spells it out perfectly. Basically, as Jehovah's Witness, you are always falling short. It doesn't matter what ranking you have achieved, there is always more to be done. You're always being judged. You're never doing an adequate job of proving your devotion to Jehovah. Never enough. So that, yep, you hit the nail on the head. I've been there. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for your emails. As I said, please continue to send them in. Jehovah Boy Podcast jehovahboypodcast@gmail.com, jehovahboypodcast@gmail.com, or you can message me on Instagram at whoDougSmith. Please share with me, comment. Your emails and messages have been a lot nicer than the Instagram comments, by the way. It's been really wonderful to hear from you. The first Instagram comment I got on a clip that I posted, somebody just wrote, "Why is your mustache so moist?" I responded, "Why don't you ask your mother?" But it kind of leveled me. I was like, why is my mustache so moist? I mean, is it from the moisturizer? I do moisturize. I'm one of the few men that actually moisturizes their face and cares about skincare. Is my mustache too moist? Is it distracting? Anyway, the comment section is a dangerous place. So if you have something nice to say, yes, please email me, and I would love to hear your story. And give me a follow on Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube, youtube.com/@whoDougSmith, and please join the Patreon for full ad-free video, early access to full ad-free video of every episode, patreon.com/JehovahBoy. And most importantly, just tell people about the pod. Send a text, share it in your stories, tell a friend. Word of mouth really helps. And when you do listen, I know you're tired of hearing every podcast host tell you to rate, review, subscribe, but it really does make a difference. Anyway, thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate you guys for listening and tuning in week after week. And I'm really enjoying doing this. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Can't wait to see you next week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.